Hi there. How are you today? I am trying out some new stuff in my sewing studio, some lighting and different things to see how they're going to work. So I thought today, as I'm trying out my new stuff, I would show you a couple of the things that I really like to keep right close to my sewing machine because I use them so much all the time. And I'm not talking about thread. I do have a pair of snips. These are my snips. I can't sew without my snips because they're right here to snip my threads. I also am a person who cannot sew without her pin cushion on my wrist. I learned to do this ages ago, and it's one of those things. If I don't have it on my wrist, I'm sticking my wrist with my pins. I got a new nice new one not long ago, and I'm trying to keep it nice. It's a little bigger, so it doesn't get used quite as much. I keep this little basket right by the side of my machine, and I put in there things that I use all the time. One of the things I use all the time are easy threader needles. So they're in this little pin cushion. I also have a pin cushion with all the different sewing machine needles, and I have them. My most favorite, the one I used most often, is the 8012 top stitch needle. As you can see, there's lots of needles stuck in here, but the ones on the top are the newest needles. The ones on the very bottom are the ones I might use for, like sewing to make holes in paper, for paper piecing, stuff like that. So I move them down, or they get moved down as I get new ones in, but the ones on the top are the good ones. And I also like 9014 top stitch needle, and sometimes I use a 116 for, again, top stitch. But they're all marked on here, and it helps me if I'm just starting something little or something. If I have to mend something and it's a t-shirt or something, I usually go and find a universal needle. I don't even know if the universal is on here. Anyway, it's a very handy little item. I also keep some alcohol pads very close to my sewing machine because when you're sewing with fusible, sometimes your machine needle will get a little full of gunk from the fibers from the fabric. So I wipe it off with alcohol prep things. In this basket, I do have some hand sewing needles because sometimes I have to do a little hand sewing when I'm at the sewing machine. So they're here along with a thimble that I use just very periodically. I'm not a thimble kind of person, but if you're sewing something thick, then it saves my fingers a little. So that's what this basket holds. I also have, right next to my sewing machine, this is for my machine quilting. I keep these around so that I can, before I start machine quilting, I have something that I can practice on. If I just need to make sure the tension's right, or if I want to try something new, I have this here. I also have one last thing, which I don't use everything in this, but I've had this an age. And I think when I first got it, it was supposed to be for little fabric scraps or trash or whatever, but I find it's very helpful to put in things that you use, like for turning fabric. I also have a little stiletto in here that I often use. Oh, and here's another. You gotta have one of these, don't you? And these are the favorite kind. I have some really pretty, this is I think this is called a clover. It's a clover seam ripper. They for me, are the very best. I have some very pretty seam rippers in here, but I don't often use them because they don't do as well as this seam ripper. So those are a few of my favorite notions that I keep right by my sewing machine. And a few years ago, I wrote down on my blog a list of some notions that I really liked. I think I might check those notions to the notions that I've shown today to see if they're still the same or if I have changed. I know, I think our notions change a little bit as we age. We find different things that we really need or use a lot more. So if you have some favorite notions, I'd love to hear about them. And we might revisit that subject soon in another little video. Hi there. This is a part 2 to the notions video. I went back and checked in my newsletter and found what the notions were that I really liked in 2017. And 2017, correct. And a lot of them are the same. I mentioned the snips back in 2017, but there were a couple things that I left out that I really liked in 2017. I still use them a lot today. One of them is, well, I've got it upside down, but it's Roxanne's Glue Basted. I use this an awfully lot in making flower hugs, in just lots of applique, just lots of uses for this. I also sometimes use Elmer's, what's it called? Elmer School Glue, because it's also washable, but it's nice to have a container that just will do a tiny little bit, tiny little drops. So I use glue. I also really like and this is, I have 2 pairs. These are my Karen K. Buckley sharp scissors. They're serrated, and I do lots of applique. I really like them for applique or for reverse applique. Just, they're the best. And you can get them in lots of sizes. I have a very small pair that I use frequently too. One thing that I said in 2017 that I really used a lot was bias bars, and I have bias bars, but I don't use them so much anymore. I have decided that it's easier for me to use the little clover bias makers. So I have a set of these. This is the 3/8 one, and it's my most used one. But I like them better than the bias bars. There are times I think when you could use the bias bars, but for most of my quilts I use this. Then I also, when I use this, I use this. This is Clover Fusible Web. That's very narrow to put on the back of your stems and things that you make with your bias tape maker. So and this was something I mentioned in 2017 also. So I think if you add those things in, it looks like that's my most favorite notions for as far as little notions. I do have another video coming up that is, I asked my friends for some suggestions about their favorite notions, and I got some really good answers and some cute answers from them too. So I'm going to do that in another video. Keep your notions near you.